Alright, let's do another hi-fi, vintage hi-fi video here. So, just as a topic kind of presents itself for me, I'll post up and have a discussion on it. I've got some others planned. I guess this is just my second time doing this. First one I went through and compared to Sansui receivers. So if you have any interest in, that topic, definitely check that out. But for this one, the actual subject here is this Kenwood KR-8010. And the point of discussion, or the emphasis that I'd like to cover here is in the value of this receiver. So this one is a 120 watt per channel, later 70s receiver. I've seen comparison videos, or sorry, not videos, but threads on Audio Karma discussing this receiver versus a SX1250 Pioneer that someone owns, where they did a comparison between the two that they had. Wasn't real clear, cut and dry winner. I think ultimately a guy would pick the 1250 if they own it, mainly for the value that they have in that piece. And it is a great looking unit, but these can be picked up for a fraction of what that 1250 can. You could probably buy 6 of these for what you'd expect to pay, at least retail wise, for an SX 1250. And similarly with the 9090, that was one where a gentleman was looking at buying a 9090 or this KR-8010. The subject of value did not come up then. This thread was from 2019, so not the same as today's market, but a lot different than you might have had 10 years ago or so. And again, the consensus actually went to this one. Most people, which it seemed like the Kenwood guys may have jumped in there over Sansui. I didn't look to see if it was in that section, but still that topic was discussed. Many hold that 9090 in very high regard. They command upwards of $1,500 to $2,000. Again, you could buy 3 or 4 of these on eBay for what you'd expect to pay for one of those. So certainly something interesting. My personal experience here with this one, and it is as found, has not been restored. I do have a technician that I do use, trust. This one will go to him hopefully in the near future. But just what I'm seeing so far, definitely one that impresses me. I have many other receivers and integrated amplifiers, even a pretty good selection of separate pieces, and this one will still find a place here. And it was not the original intention. I did plan to pick it up, play with it for a little while, and then eventually either sell it or trade it. But really, honestly, I guess for lack of a better term, really falling in love with this thing, at least for now, and it mainly is to do with that value. So if this was able to be compared against those, and I'm also seeing the same performance out of this one, even unrestored, I think it's definitely something worth looking at. So just jump right into some of the features with this one. Obviously, I'm doing this more for comparison's sake, and then just maybe some of the unique things that you see with it. So we do have 3 sets of speaker outputs, not standard by any means. At least 2 is pretty standard, but occasionally you'll see some with 3. I've never seen anything more than that on a receiver anyway. So it's nice to have that. Another actually pretty unique thing here out of the 4 or 5 bigger receivers I've had, over 120 watts or at. This is the first one I've seen that had the mid adjustment capability. So that's nice to have. Gives you that extra bit of ability to tune it to your room or to your speaker's liking. You're able to pick up potential pairing there that you may not have otherwise. Some receivers may not pair so well with a brighter receiver, or with some you may not find you know, that vocal range is with speakers, you know, they don't push out the vocals like you might like. Obviously with the mid adjustment, that's where that vocal range is going to be. So having that, honestly, it's really nice to see it. Not played with it too much, just had this thing about a week or so, you know, haven't actually gotten into that part of it, but it's nice that it's there nonetheless. Obviously we got tone defeat, that's not standard. It's nice to have, so, you know, gonna assume that just completely removes the tone circuit, simplifies things, you know, which for someone really wanting the absolute highest quality audio they can having tone defeat, you know, that straight path is, you know, definitely something nice. Not all receivers will have the button or switch. You know, they may just like automatically take that out of the circuit by being straight up, you know, on the dial, which, you know, I do see that occasionally. Obviously balance knob's pretty standard. FM muting's, you know, getting really standard. With mono, I mean, those are all very standard things. Volume knob, I like them when they're a little bit bigger, but, you know, doesn't look too bad. Not as symmetrical as some out there. You know, I think the Sansui G series, you know, they're almost perfectly mirrored with the button layout and stuff. That's a little bit better looking, but, you know, I think overall it's a sharp looking unit. Obviously your tape circuit here, 2 phono section, no moving coil provision, but they do tout a 90 dB sensitivity with this phono section, something Sansui really put at least a lot of marketing work into. You know, and I actually, honestly, I've got it hooked up to a turntable. I think it sounds pretty good. It's not one where I can say, you know, hard comparison. I didn't run it with my normal phono cartridge, but, you know, with this cartridge and these speakers and this system, honestly, I'm really happy with the phono performance. And then this is actually something that I've never seen before. So we've got, which this leads to something on the back too, but we've got the sound inject here. So I guess you're able to dub over or dub in through the tape loop some sound. So I guess, you know, like audio mixing, think audio mixing today, you know, obviously we can do it electronically, but this unit actually allowed that, if I'm understanding it correctly. So something kind of unique there for someone wanting to stick to all analog. Hey, this might be a, you know, cheap way for you to dub your own tracks. You know, kind of cool feature to have, you know, not something that you see. And so we do have a couple other pieces here that I want to cover with this, just because they are period correct. And you know, actually the turntable was purchased with this unit. I got this from the original owner, and you know, so he bought these brand new from a shop. So we'll quickly do a demonstration here, and we may even get a bonus. So I'm gonna go ahead and cue up the record. One thing, so this is obviously over normal rack width, which you've got here with that tape player. So it does have to be on top of this rack, which, you know, for these purposes, I could have this stacked, and then, you know, people's heads might explode on top of the receiver. But you know, had an empty slot here, so, you know, just stuck it down here. Something temporary. So we'll cue this up. Fully automatic turntable. Again, we got this, you know, from the original owner. Does have some cosmetic issues. The receiver's honestly almost flawless. This one, we had some shrinking there with the vinyl. So if you ever come across one of those, you might you know, look for that. I did find a wood walnut colored marker, and, you know, did a little bit, at least to give it like the 5-foot test. You know, as you get further back, it's not so noticeable. But with this turntable, a couple of issues, you know, and so if a guy's looking at one of these, you know, wants to try and pick up a system, and I you know, honestly, when I'm buying pieces, I kind of like to have, you know, pieces that match and, you know, might have been purchased together. But this came with a pretty sweet Stanton 500 cartridge. I don't know if that was bought new with that, and I was able to pick up a I think it's Turntables Direct. Able to pick up a new stylus there for 35 bucks, and my goodness, this thing sounds good. Super impressed with that. So I think I'll actually plan on picking up another one of those. Here would be a cassette player that you might expect to find from that same era. Obviously, you know, you look at the knobs, very similar, not a dead match, but you know, pretty similar, even down to these smaller knobs and switches. You know, again, not a dead match, but everything really, you know, flows together pretty nice. Same finish with the faceplate. You know, as far as the metal goes, dead match there. Our meters, very similar. You know, you look at the dials, a little bit different style of meter, but the coloring's similar. Obviously, the thickness is similar. Lighting's similar to what you have on the faceplate there. So, you know, if you want a period correct and pretty well matched tape player for your Kenwood receiver, you know, and this is a 3-head tape deck, KX-1030. These are readily available online too. This isn't some ultra rare piece. You know, that's one to check out. But getting off subject here a little bit, I did want to cover that. But again, we got a record play in here, and hopefully it'll do it. So I'm actually utilizing the Phono 2. Okay, so now we only have sound out of one channel. So we'll turn it up. So just this left channel is working. As I switch to the right, no sound coming out. So, you know, switch back, right channel, no sound. So, and when I first turned this thing on, I had no sound coming out of the phono section, which, you know, if a person's not careful, they might just assume that that is bad and that they have to take a technician to be serviced. But, you know, having gone down this road a few times, I end up, you know, when you buy one, you could just open it up and automatically spray them with deoxit. But a way to, you know, kind of test things out, which this one, you know, everything else that was pretty relatively scratch-free. I'm guessing this section of the pot here wasn't utilized, so I know he used FM, and then he probably used Phono 1 and AM, but I don't think, even looking at the inputs in the back, that Phono 2 or aux were ever used. So as I kind of play with this back and forth, I actually am able to pick up that Phono 2 out of both channels. So it was switching there, but so you can see we've got sound coming out, and it sounds good. So, you know, just something to keep in mind if you ever have trouble with one of these in the future. And I may switch up here. Yeah, so now I don't have the right channel again. So obviously I need to get that, and I've got static coming out of the right in aux. So, you know, kind of work it back and forth here until I get both channels playing without static, which we've got now. With this sound inject, we're going to get to this in the back, but keep that in mind. There's something a little different here that I hadn't seen before. So this actually pulls, and whenever you're utilizing a tape circuit, again, you can run 2 inputs in, and the way I read it, you just dub in music that way. But obviously you wouldn't be able to have the aux into tape recording, I guess, because it's muted right now with that out. So, you know, I don't know 100% how that works, but, you know, someone interested in that, or, you know, that thinks they may use that, could do a bit more digging. I do have the cover off. We're going to jump in here. One of the other things I want to talk about this, again, with the value, is just how nicely this thing's laid out. So with other receivers I've had, namely like a Yamaha CR-2020, this one really is very serviceable, where with that one you'll get technicians, you know, if you call and say, hey, I want my Yamaha, they may just hang up on you at that point, but then you say CR-2020 and they may cuss you out and then hang up on you. Very few guys will actually work on those. If they do, you know, I hate to say it, but you're probably going to get charged a premium, and expect, a pretty hefty bill, even if they don't charge a premium, because they just are a pain to get two pieces. They've got to spend, I'm going to guess hours just in disassembly in order to get to the parts that they need to service. Where with this, you don't see anything stacked up here. Like with that Yamaha, there's like this section of the receiver, there's a couple of rods running down through it that have to be disassembled, which are not easy to get back together. And then you've got pieces stacked on top of each other, so that you've got to basically unlayer the thing just to get down to the parts that you need to service. Something else to look at with these main filter caps, so these are round. So that's you got like some of the Sansuis run those oval ones. There's room in here, so sometimes you'll get things just so tight, or they'll have the main filter caps be integral to the design, and you'll have to fabricate a bracket or something like that if you don't go back with the exact same sized capacitors. So you get people fabricating a bracket, or they'll take these caps out and hollow them out and stuff in new replacement capacitors back into these same old dirty caps. But with this one, if I pay attention, I can get something the same diameter and still use this metal bracket. But honestly, a guy doesn't even have to do that. You could just scrap that metal bracket there and go back in with whatever capacitors you want. Something else we don't have here is power packs. Nothing proprietary, anything like that. So again, more than serviceable. I didn't see anything online about these not being able to be replaced, so I'm going to assume if you have one of these go out, more than likely they would have been discussing that on Audio Karma as I was reading about this one before picking it up. Again, nothing crazy here. I seen a repair video where someone had these cards just pulled out with the entire heatsink. So with all this wiring, I'm gonna guess you just unscrew this thing, it lifts right out. Pretty simple, nothing too complicated. This stuff would be accessible from the bottom. This is probably accessible from the bottom. There is, if the heatsink, obviously lifts right out, as long as you can get to, or get the faceplate off and get to the front of this a little better. There is a few caps in here, so this might be the only section where things get, at least tight. One other thing too, reading through the various Audio Karma threads, and this is actually more common the later you get into the 70s. There's no known bad transistors that I've seen listed for this receiver. So what you get, especially with the earlier non-tube pieces, the earlier transistor gear, is transistors that were either prone to failure or prone to noise, or there's a lot of different things that can go wrong with them. But with this one, I didn't see any of those, these 4 transistors have to be replaced, or these, if you're, not, if you get the wrong piece of gear, you could need to replace 30 transistors or something like that in a early 70s Pioneer SX 1500. I know there's at least 15 or 20 in there that have to go because they're just that bad. Which that was newer technology. They were still figuring things out, and I don't think they ever designed them thinking someone would be working on them in 50 years wanting to get them back to service, but they didn't know how bad things could get for us. So again, this card just lifts right out. The phono section is something that they're very proud of. I think they advertised 90 dB sensitivity with it. Look at the design here. We've got some obviously some films there, which are nice to see. So probably how they're able to achieve that is with the utilization of higher quality components, element capacitors. Looks like something a little bit higher end, as opposed to just your standard gray caps like you might see in use in lesser high fidelity units. I'm going to pause here real quick and turn it around. We'll get to the back side. Okay, so brought this up earlier, but this is something I hadn't actually ever seen before, is the jumpers in the tape loop, and I wasn't sure if it was an accident or why those would be there, but that's actually to do with that section here, and I can't remember the name of it, so I'm going to bring you around and jog my memory with the sound inject. So they are jumpering that, or they exist, or they're there for that. So I don't completely understand it, but that, that's what I was able to find on Audio Karma. Again, something I'd never seen. So I was kind of confused by it as I read some more, though, seeing where someone mentioned that it was to do with that. First time I've seen that, so obviously it's the first time I've seen this, so kind of makes sense. Again, we're talking about the value and features of this. Even with some other high-end pieces, you don't always get power in or main in pre-out. And you may not have run into a situation where you wanted to use this, but the fact that it's there is pretty cool, especially if you plan to pick up more gear in the future. I'm one of those people that likes to basically collect, trade, sell, barter pretty frequently. This is one of my major hobbies, and the ability to have this makes it really nice. So I'm able to use this receiver as just a preamplifier. So you just unplug the jumpers, run a pair of interconnects, out here into an amplifier, separate amplifier, and you got your full volume control. You're able to utilize all these inputs, that phono section that they tout about, and run it into a separate amplifier, which you can gain more power. Or heck, a guy could even get a tube amp and use this to have your preamplifier section. It's good for diagnosing, so if you have a problem, you can separate either the preamp or the main amp, and with this, which is nice. And then the last thing is with this, you can actually run, without having to go through the tape loop, you can run your equalizer in here, which is actually a better way of doing it. Do have the switched and unswitched, pretty common feature there. Again, we've got 3 separate speaker inputs, which is nice because, and this is the worst thing about this unit, I freaking hate these Kenwood speaker connections from this era. And one of the reasons is actually right here. This thing's just completely dead in the water. So I might be able to fix it. The nut may have just pulled out, or it could just be stripped. So I didn't diagnose it too much further because, hey, I've got 2 other sets of speaker outputs there. One solution, so they do that over time. I've had 4 or 5 Kenwood pieces. It seems like they use these even mid-70s. This is a later 70s piece. They had these same stupid speaker connections, and they've done this too. Even my Kenwood 600 Supreme uses these, and one of them stripped out just like this one did. So these, you normally tighten them down, which that one's all the way loose. They do eventually get tight. With this, it's just not doing nothing. You can see how floppy it is. There's something wrong with it. That one's not floppy. But I was able to pick up these connectors off Amazon, pretty cheap. I think you get like 8 of them, so you need 4, for a pair of speakers. So you'd be able to do it with 2 channels, or 2 different amplifiers or receivers, for like $14. So not bad. And then I get to use my banana plugs, which I'm lazy and I like to swap things in and out a lot, so it makes it really nice. Just half a second, I've got those disconnected, can plug something else in. That is it as far as the back discussion. I guess there's no phono provision for moving coil, which would be nice, but not, by any means. There's ways around that. You can buy a, moving coil preamp, for really inexpensive, which would probably be better, honestly, than something integrated into a receiver. If someone's wondering, this is for the FM section, so I thought maybe that would be for your phono, but which it's not the right denominator there. But if a guy looks at it, you might just automatically assume that, but it's for FMD emphasis, as you can see there. I think that's it. We'll pause again here real quick while we jump back to the front. Alright, and this thing is getting fairly long, especially, I've seen some full-blown repair videos that didn't run, 20 minutes, but speaking of that, I did see, on Audio Karma, someone broke down, had a really nice restoration video. I think it's Super Noob was his name. Said he, did a full recap and had 106 capacitors that he replaced, 2 trim resistors, He did have to replace 2 transistors, which were just out of spec, not because they were known bad or anything like that. Put a new relay in, which is pretty common. People do that. And but the nice thing is it looked like there was a drop-in replacement. It is right there. So, sometimes you can't get the relay, or you have to pretty heavily modify them. But I do believe from reading his thread that, there was just a drop-in replacement there. And then we've got 9 LEDs. So I did order the cool blue for this. Again, do plan to have this thing completely restored. So, it's one that I don't plan on getting rid of. We did go over the tape deck and turntable here, but again, this KD 2000, very correct, really nice turntable, great value here too. These can be had for, $150. I would not recommend any Kenwood speakers of this era. They may have had one set that was decent, but if you're going, if you're one of these people that, OCD or whatever, think you're just going to go dead match, you pick up a pair of JBLs or later era speakers rather than, trying to stick with something from this period. And you'll be much better served and much happier. This thing has all the grunt in the world. That's one of the things that amazes me about it. I've had plenty of, pieces of gear that advertise over 100 watts, and as you push speakers, that's whenever or push receivers, through your speakers, that's when you're really able to separate, things from another, which, these are 18,000 UF filter caps, and that's a huge transformer. So those are both pretty good indicators that this thing's pretty robust, but you still are able to kind of separate the lesser built quality components just by cranking it up and seeing how much of the dynamics and the quality still remains at higher volume. Anything can do it at lower levels, but once you're actually pushing them, that's where you really see a difference. So this one, even unrestored, I really held together pretty well at those higher levels. So I'm pretty impressed with it. Mentioned my Kenwood 600. There it is. Again, I actually have this tape deck to go with that. They don't match as nicely as these two do, so the finish on the faceplate on that isn't as nice as not as nicely matched as these two. But that's as close as you can get out of that Kenwood 600, as this tape player. So I think we're pretty well at the end. I did want to talk about the fact that you could get this with a wood case, and holy cow, they look good when they've got that wood case. I'm tempted to pick one up or see about getting one made. Do yourself a favor and look those up. And then they did also have a set of rack handles with it, which, there's plenty of room here. My fingers going like right there, so that makes sense that you're able to mount that, and that it's designed to have the rack handles with it. I've actually seen it pretty commonly on the KR-8010s. I think I've seen 3 or 4 pop up here around me that had the rack handles on them. It seems to me like they're more often have the rack handles than they don't, which they're big heavy beasts, so I guess that makes sense. People ordered them just to help transport them and stuff. And we'll do one more quick discussion on the computer, just over pricing and the different resources and the stuff that are available, and we'll close this one out. Okay, we're on Hi-Fi Shark here. One's actually for sale right now, so you can actually filter and look specifically at regions. So I could hit North America here and cut out things that aren't in at least the US, Canada, and obviously in North America. We've got a couple on here, so we've got, or a few. We've got one $795, pretty decent value. I believe this one's $741, and then we've got one even as far down as $480. So clicking on this piece, which they're advertising a little oversold there, saying 130 watts a channel when we know it's 120. But this one doesn't look too bad. This is as of today's date, end of October in 2023. My power switch is actually bent there too. But going through, it looks pretty serviceable. few little scuffs and stuff on the faceplate. This one doesn't have a finish on it, so you could actually, reduce those. You might not have perfectly matched grain then. And then, just painting the cover, and honestly, this $350 120 watt a channel receiver's got the jumpers there. I don't see them on the FM side or on the tape loop side like mine has, but these are the main ones to have. Really isn't too bad a deal. Sold as parts for repair, so they're basically selling it in a non-working condition. $350. Yeah, you got one for $600 that I pulled up earlier. So only a channel works on the selector. That's probably a dirty pot. But for a 120 watt receiver with relatively inexpensive restoration, compared to what you might get from others, heck of a buy. Resources like this classic receivers here is really nice. I really appreciate someone taking the time to do this. So they go through, discuss the different features. 04 gang tuner, which is nice. They, put some thought and care into that. We've got the Dolby circuit, which is no longer in use. Really nice. They copied in the sales literature. So, that's where I actually seen them pushing the signal to noise ratio, as far as the phono section there, 90 dB. And then we've got, them touting again the tuner section, which, back in the late 70s was a bigger deal. We do have speaker load impedance of 4 ohms, so that's, something else to discuss. Like my Sansui G7500 actually, is not recommended below 8. So, having it, you pick up a pair of Sterling Vegas, for example, like the VS150s, or even smaller like the 120s. Those are 4 ohm speakers. You can do some damage to your receiver if you're pushing it hard. Obviously, you've seen the inside of mine, but here's a a new nice looking one. And this is the last thing I wanted to cover. So there is a common issue with the power switch. Really, the only thing that I've seen as far as common problems. There's plenty of fixes though for it. One of which is just flipping the switch over, or you can replace them. So there's good resources and people already discussing it there. Everything else, here's a view from the bottom. Everything else is more than serviceable on it, which is great. You don't always see that. Like that Sansui 9090, there's things there that are very difficult to service, and there's circuits tied in together, like there's pieces that are reliant on the FM section. So you think, well, I don't care about FM anyway, but it's actually integrated into other pieces. So a person has to actually get in and completely redo that FM section in order to have the best out of the receiver, where I may choose to not touch it on mine, which out of those 106 capacitors, it's probably 10, 15, 20% of those were just in the FM section. Maybe I'm going to skip that because it'd be fine to do that. So yeah, that's what I had. Don't get me started on these big empty box things. But wanted to cover my new receiver there. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And yeah, happy hunting. And yeah, thanks for taking the time to listen to me ramble on about my piece of vintage hi-fi.